Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
Podcast for parents and families everywhere.
Whether you have kids that plan to attend college or you have current college students, you want them in and you want them to graduate.
And you want a quality education that is worth every penny of your hard-earned money. I am Mark Stucker, and I'm a college coach.
And I am Anika Madden, and I am a parent. And it is Thursday, November 1st, Jalen Madden's birthday, by the way.
Yay!
And welcome to episode number 40, what you need to know about the SAT. In this week's news, we're reviewing an article that talks about why universities are phasing out luxury dorms. And we are in chapter 40 of 171 answers. And Mark is telling us what we need to know about the SAT test. And this week's question asks if contributing more to a 401k would help a family qualify for more financial aid. And Mark is in part 2 of his interview with Mr. Brennan Barnard as they continue with the 20 mistakes that parents make in the college admissions process.
Listeners, many of you heard our interview with Chica, a 12th grade student I'm working with, who's helping us walk through her process and share with us what she's learned. But we also have a junior, and that is Anika's daughter, Janaea. We're kind of following her process as well. We know she took the SAT about 2 weeks ago. Anika recently visited her at her Pennsylvania boarding school. Any updates for us, Anika?
Well, Mark, the update was that we relaxed and had a good time together. And I refused to bring up college talk this time. She just kept eyeballing me like, when is it coming? I was like, no, we're just chilling. So the update is that we're all relaxed and we're zenned out and we're ready to take this thing on.
So you know what's good about that? That tells me you're immediately applying the wisdom from Mr. Brennan Barnard in our last episode, where he said 1 day a week to talk college, people. 1 day a week. That was his advice. So it looks like you're putting it to use immediately.
Yes, I am. Doggone it.
Let's turn to college hot topics in the news.
All right, Mark, our article is found in The Atlantic, and it's entitled Why Universities Are Phasing Out Luxury Dorms. And this is written by Mr. Jeffrey Selingo. And what it's about now, it's found that enrollment and retention rates are threatened by these luxury dorms and facilities. So before, many of these colleges found that the simplest way to compete for the attention in the crowded market was to build these fancier, higher price facilities and dorms. So much that between 2001 and 2012, the amount of debt taken on by colleges rose 88% to $307 billion. And so the big problem with this, well, two problems. The first one is that it's new student fees that funded this debt for all of this new fancy stuff. And secondly, some of the higher education experts began to argue that these fancier amenities for these students started to distract them from their studies, from their work. Hence, not a strong focus on academic achievement, which could lead in some cases to decreased graduation rates. So, Mark, when did the light bulb start going off for these folks?
Well, money, money, money. Show me the money. This is very financially related. So for our regular listeners in our listening family, you may recall episode 4. The article we talked about there was called No Kid Needs a Water Park to Study. And we talked about lazy rivers and extravagant amenities and how colleges are using them to draw students in. And so this article talks about basically, that's true. That happened from the late 90s all the way up to 2012. And we talked about many schools in that original discussion. And this article talks about others. It talks about Gettysburg spending $27 million on a rec center, and Drexel dropping $45 million on their rec center with the walking and jogging track, and Memphis with the $50 million on the 169,000 center that houses the theater and food court and computer labs, and Texas Tech also that had to beat LSU by beating that 565-foot water park with their own lazy river with their own 645-foot lazy river. So that's kind of what had gone on, right? And it was booming. Times were booming, but it was different back then because more students were graduating every year coming out of high school. Less students were being tempted to look at online options. International students were flowing in even more, and the economy. So times were kind of a booming, and kids were figuring out, guess what? I can have a campus that looks like a country club. And so for any of us that are a little older that went to school and in any time before the late 90s, most of us our experience was pretty Spartan existent. I mean, a traditional dorm room, 2 people in a dorm, long corridor in the hall, what we call traditional style. I can remember my floor had probably my first year, like 56 students on it, hallway bathroom. That's all that we knew. But you talk to students nowadays and boy, they've come to expect, especially when it comes to food options, rec centers, and certainly dormitories. And so the conventional wisdom had kind of been that this is what you got to do to compete. Like if you don't up the antes and turn your campus into a country club, you're going to be sitting there with empty rooms. But then when times get tough financially, Anika, as you know, just like in our own lives, right? It causes us to make some different decisions. And so what happened basically is that in order to have all of those amenities, the cost was just going up. And it got to the point where students are like, I'm just not paying their, not just students, but us folk, parents, right? I'm not paying that anymore. So it's rising tuition, rising student debt, declining numbers of graduates made people take a step back. And here's one of the quotes I really like in the article. It's from Susan Fitzgerald, who's an associate managing director at Moody's Investing Service. And they examine finances of more than 500 colleges that issue bonds through their public markets. And she said this, she said, we don't see the amenities arms race anymore. And another thing she said, we're seeing a move away from trophy buildings as universities prioritize their spending. And then another example, Anika, was Georgia State right here in Atlanta. They had built this real opulent University Commons Center in 2007 with 168 million complex apartment style residence halls. And then they did a study, and the study found that for every $5,000 in unmet financial need, a student was 12% less likely to graduate. So in other words, they were paying the bucks for this, but they were dropping out because they couldn't afford it. So they did something which seemed a little controversial. They said, we're going to start this Patton Hall, which was much, much more Spartan. It has like 191 square feet per room instead of 443 square feet like the University Commons had. And the cost of to stay in Patton Hall was actually less for room and board than just University Commons had. And at first they were, somewhat skeptical. Let's just build 200 of these rooms because we know, everyone's going to go for the amenities. And guess what? They packed that thing out so fast, it wasn't even funny. So then they, of course, expanded more and more and more. And this is what's happening nationwide now. It's like things are shifting as well. San Francisco and San Diego are a couple other schools that have done the same thing. They've scaled down the facilities and they're finding that people are willing to save money and pay for less. So everything goes in cycles. Everything goes in cycles. And you know what? When you don't have it, you don't have it. Like, you know what I mean? It's one thing when you're rolling it in to go for the country club apartment. But hey, That's if right. This is what is going to there's been also another thing, Anika, we should talk about, which is there's been so much talk about student debt right now that families are more reluctant to go $40,000 or more in debt for undergraduate than they were before. Any ideas why? Why the change? No, why people are less likely to incur that level of debt that they were incurring,
Why they're more willing to go into debt? Oh, well, shoot, we're not making the money that we used to make. I mean, wouldn't that be front and center? And it's just, but how about this statement from Thomas Carlson Reddick? He's one of the partners at one of the architectural firms. And he was saying that students are more open to these new living arrangements than we give them credit for. So it's kind of like maybe it's this awakening, not just among the students, but also the parents too, is that what do we really need out of this experience? Like, and anybody listen to the episode when we covered this before, that I am for facilities and living well, not $1 billion well, but I do promote, enhanced facilities. But the point is that there's a shift. Instead of like these grandiose things, it's like, making little small amenities like, the Wii and the inbox and the inbox, the Xbox and all those things that the kids really enjoy doing. It's just a matter of shifting. It's a shift in and just, I don't know. It's a shift in something. Well, but it's a shift.
I think you're onto it. You're hitting a big part of it, which is incomes have not risen at the cost of inflation. It's certainly not the cost of college. So that's part of it. But the other thing that really played a role is the financial crisis of 2008. We have not recovered from that financial crisis. And one of the things that occurred with that crisis was states cut back their aid, passing more and more and more of the costs onto families. So it's like a double whammy. So people are already paying more for tuition, more for room and board. And then a lot of these, opulent resources were being funded by additional student fees. So, and then the other thing that happened in 2008 to 2011, 12, was a lot of students were graduating and they were working at Starbucks, and waiting tables. And it really, for the first time, really in my lifetime, people were starting to really question the value of a college degree. And if you will talk to admission directors across the country, they will tell you that they are asked more than ever to prove the ROI and what's going to be the return of my investment if I invest this whatever $200,000-$300,000 or even $100,000. And so that type of pressure, parents are just being more savvy shoppers, and they're just not willing to incur that kind of debt. And I think this is a good thing because you know what?
That's right.
I mean, for our regular listeners, Anika and I, we get along pretty well, but we kind of had a disagreement on that episode 4. Remember? You were really into the facilities, and I was like, students don't need all that to go to school. Okay.
No, I was into improved, enhanced facilities. I wasn't into the L-shaped drifting pool, whatever that thing was. But but I'm gonna tell you what this reminds me of, Mark. So when I take my kids, because you think about the awareness around the parents and the students saying, okay, what do we really value here?
Of
course. Like when I take Jalen to shop, like if I'm spending my money, he's like, yeah, I'll get that. He's running down the aisle. But when I take him with his own money, he's like, no, I'm good. I don't need that right now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say something about this too. So I get it, because one of the schools that talked about here was St. Leo in Florida. And they were one of the schools that were recruiting Joy to play basketball. And she seriously considered attending there. And it talked about how their schools are still doing facilities, but they've just dumbed down a little bit and they're not spending as much. And they actually quoted St. Leo in here because they have like this game room that is like off the chain. This game room in the dorm. I mean, you would think that you're at like I'm aging myself here, like the Jetsons cartoon, like way back, something out of like 22nd century. And Joy still talks about that game room. So I do get the appeal. I do get the appeal. We even as adults, we like our little trinkets.
Listen, just give them some food, heat, and air conditioning. They'll be fine. Now it's time for our step-by-step walkthrough of the college admissions process.
Friends, we are in our 40th episode, and that means we're in the 40th chapter of a book I wrote called 171 Answers. Subtitle is To the Most Asked College Admissions Questions. So this is the part of our podcast where we kind of go chapter by chapter through my book and hit a couple of the key points. And we're actually in a section where we're going to be talking about some aspect of test scores, because I get lots of test score questions for a while. Last week we took on the ACT, and today, what is the SAT? So what were your thoughts on this chapter, Nika?
We know it's the alternative to the ACT. And once again, you nicely outline each section and the score range for each one. And you also list the months that the test is offered. What are we looking at? March, May, June. Help me out, Mark. August, October. Is that it? Yeah. And
August,
then the planning
October, November, and
before
December.
we get ready to take the test. So you're saying you're telling us to plan at least 6 weeks up to the testing date to make sure we avoid all the fees, and the kid can make sure they can get into their preferred testing site. So I'm good. I mean, what else you got, Mark?
So when I say planning, I'm just talking about when you register, right? It's administered by the College Board. Planning takes place much more than 6 weeks before, but the actual registration, talks about. So a couple of things I want to emphasize. One is that the SAT is the oldest of the two tests, founded in 1926, and it was founded as the Scholastic Aptitude Test. So this was really designed to be a proxy for an IQ test. They were really trying to identify people that they felt were very bright, but may not have been exposed to some of the finer aspects of a quality education. And they felt like, let's make sure we don't miss out on bright kids that may not be able to prove how bright they are through content, more of an achievement test, but they could use IQ. And so it started out really as a proxy for an IQ test. And over time, the test morphed. And that's why the name has been literally all over the place, Anika. The SAT originally was a Scholastic Aptitude Test. You don't hear anybody say that now. Aptitude Test. Then it became SAT, Scholastic Achievement Test. And now it's just SAT. So they've changed it quite a few times. There have been some major changes that have occurred.
Mark, I'm sorry.
2005.
Mark, before you say, who is they? Who's making these changes?
College Board administers the SAT.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah, they administer the SAT. Yeah. And so 2005 was a huge overhaul of the test. many of us remember growing up who took an SAT that the SAT was out of 1,600 points. And that was true up until 2005. And then it changed and went down to 2,400 from '05. And then 16, it went 2016, which is the current test. It's called the redesigned test. That's the term that you'll hear used, the redesigned SAT. And a couple things that I'll say about this new redesigned SAT is that, once again, remember last week, Anika, how we talked about how the ACT had surpassed the SAT in market share?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2012 was the first time there were more ACT test takers than SAT, and it got to close to 500,000 more. And so the SAT was smart. They said, okay, why are we losing market share? One, we have a guessing penalty, and the ACT doesn't. So if you guessed and made a mistake on the SAT before 2016, you were penalized. So they got rid of that. Then they also said, okay, we're losing out on these state contracts. So what do we need to do to get these state contracts? We talked about the state contracts last week. And so let's align our test even more with Common Core so that states will feel like it's testing similar material to what they're trying to emphasize in the classroom. So basically, the bottom line with this new test is it's extremely Algebra 2 focused on the math. It goes into high-level Algebra 2, but students that know their Algebra 2 really well should do well on the math portion of this new redesigned SAT. And the reading comprehension is advanced reading comprehension. So the reading is actually 2 years above the reading level on the ACT, even that the math on the ACT is oftentimes more advanced because there's more special topics math. So what they did, they actually took portions from AP exams, AP language exams, and those are some of the portions you have to read. So some of the reading comprehension is not easy on the test. So it's basically become a reading test and an Algebra 2 test. And you're scored between 2 to 800 in evidence-based reading and writing, and 2 to 800 in math, giving you a score somewhere between 400 and 1,600. Now, there are 3 sub-scores. There's a reading score, a writing a language score, and a math score that range between 10 and 40. And there are some schools, Anika, that have requirements for you to hit certain scores within those sub-scores. So, that's a little bit of a twist. You never really saw that before. But that's the SAT in a nutshell.
Well,
any
this
questions?
makes me happy because Janae's test prep tutor sent me an email with all these questions. And the first one was, has she taken Algebra 2? And I was just like scanning my email trying to her get stuff. I'm like, I don't know why. But clearly that's just
now you know.
So now I'm gonna respond like I was sane person, but like, well, I just haven't replied back yet. Yeah.
Well, Nick, I had this crazy idea, and it's not that crazy. So just the other day I said, I think I want to sign up and not sneak in, but go in and actually take this test again. One, because I'm partly curious how well I'll do. And then 2, because you know how they'll bombard me with mail, right? Once I take the test, because of course I can't fill in my real age. I got to kind of pretend I'm 18 or something, and I get all of this mail, and I kind of want to study the mail because I kept all of Karis's mail, and then one day I threw this giant box out, and I'm so regret that I threw it out because I like to go back and look at because schools are doing all kinds of really, really neat marketing things in the last couple of years. And I'm like, if I go take the test, then I'll get all that mail and I can keep up with what they're doing. But I don't know. Imagine everybody staring at me like, what is this guy doing beside me taking this test?
Only Mark Stucker, folks. Only Mark.
Listeners, stay posted whether I get the boldness to do it. But I'm not telling anybody my score.
That's hilarious.
It's time for a question from one of our listeners.
All right, Mark, our question is coming from Miss Jill in Colorado. And she asked, would contributing more to our 401k help us qualify for more financial aid? Would it?
And this is a great question. And it's one that I get quite a bit. And I understand why I get this, because let's say you're coming to the end of the year and you're trying to reduce your taxable income. One of the first things you do, if possible, is you say, okay, have I given as much money as I can, to a retirement account? Because, of course, taxes look at your adjusted gross income. And one of the things that they do when they're looking at your, adjusted gross income is they will subtract contributions you make to tax-deferred retirement savings. And I'm talking about 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, SEP IRAs, and that kind of thing. So it would make sense if I can lower my taxable income by contributing to a retirement account. Am I also lowering the amount of money that the schools will use to determine how much I have to pay? Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I have bad news.
Oh, I was so confident you were going to be like, yeah. Not, sorry.
Well, you better erase that confidence. So, so they just don't. So what happens is schools, FAFSA, as well as the CSS profile, for those of you who are hearing those terms for the first time, those are the two main forms you have to complete for financial aid. The FAFSA, free application for federal student aid, will be required for all colleges in order to get federal aid, but there are 180 other schools, private schools, almost all of them, except for 7, tend to be more selective schools, tend to be wealthier schools. They use something else administered by the College Board. We just call it the profile for short. That is a much, much more complex document that looks at how they give away their own institutional money. Both of these two, and there are different methodologies. And if you want to hear a lot more on that, go back and listen to episodes 25, 26, and 27. And the interview with David Jelinas, we did a deep dive into that there. Both of them, they primarily are looking at what adjusted gross income for your income, okay, as well as assets, okay? But they don't only look at adjusted gross income, Anika. There's some additional deductions that can lower your adjusted gross income. And then there are some other things that fall in this category called untaxed income. And those are things they will add to your adjusted gross income to come up with the figure that they're going to use to calculate the amount of need-based aid you're eligible for. And some of the things that can be added in as untaxed income are disability benefits, workman's compensation, the untaxed portions of health savings accounts, and veteran non-educational benefits. This is all in question 94 on the FAFSA. Child custody payments, if you're getting like a military housing benefit, clergy housing, can be added back in to income. And then one of the biggest things, of course, is retirement contributions. Now, the retirement contributions have to be pre-tax contributions to be added back in. This is very important. So this would not pertain to a Roth IRA, which uses post-tax money. So the question is, one would be this: why do you think they add retirement contributions back in and therefore are going to ask you to pay more money because you put this money away for retirement?
It's not right. I don't know. It's not right. Tell me.
So the basic logic is that the person, let's just throw numbers out. Let's say one person had 100,000 and then another person had 100,000, but they also threw in, 15,000 for retirement. Say, it's 15,000 for retirement. So just make it simple, 10,000 for retirement. So the logic would be that's not the same. This family had more money than that other family. So it's apples and oranges. And if we're going to compare, they're really not the same financial picture. But I have to tell you this, Anika. So you probably know by now, there's several people that are kind of like my go-to people when it comes to expertise on finances. And we've had most of those on here. We've had Michael Runowitz. We've had, Elaine Griffin Rubin. We've had David Jelinas. These are some of my go-tos. And there's another guy that I haven't had the show yet, but he is another one of my go-tos. And I talked to him a lot about money, and I've listened to his presentations a lot. His name is John, and he's actually the director of financial aid at Emory University. And I was watching John do a presentation. I've heard him do about 3 presentations in the last 3 months, but I was watching him do a presentation, and somebody asked this question to him, and he started putting the book up and talking. He's like, "Don't throw stuff at me with what I'm going to tell you right now." So, it is one of these things that people kind of wince when they explain it because they feel like, listen, that's a disincentive for me to contribute to my retirement.
Right, exactly.
But the logic would be that it's not an apples for apples comparison if we don't take into consideration your extra 10, 15, 20, whatever, some cases more money that you have. And unfortunately, there is this category called untaxed income, and it will get added back to your adjusted gross income along with an assessment of your assets. And that will be used along with other things such as how many kids are in college and how big your family size is. how old is the oldest parent, and all those things are kind of factored in. It's kind of a complex formula, but it is what it is. I don't make the rules. Don't shoot
Back
me
to the
either.
drawing board, Jill. Call me when you come up with something else, please.
You know what? I thought about something you said in one of the episodes. You said, I'm just a mom on a struggle bus. And then one of our, trying to make it out here. And then one of our listeners sent us an email today, said, tell Anika I'm with her. I'm a mom on a struggle bus. So I think there's probably a lot of moms on a struggle bus after this
Welcome
information.
aboard.
Okay, friends, I know that you really enjoyed part 1 of my interview with Brennan Barnard last week because a number of you reached out and told us that. And last week, we talked about the first 6 mistakes that parents often make in the college admission process. And this week, we'll have 5 more for you. All of these mistakes deal with not validating your child's self-worth. So listen and apply it to your college process for your college-bound kid.
And now, this week's interview with a special guest.
So transitioning, we're into our second main category where we see missteps made, and that is the category we're calling not validating your child's own self-worth. So the first point we want to bring up here is making your child feel like their college list or where they're admitted to or eventually where they matriculate doesn't make you feel proud as the parent/guardian. What do you want to share about this one, Brennan?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, this is so layered, right?
Yes.
I mean, and I always when I think of that kind of topic, I come back to this letter that Middlebury College sent out a bunch of years ago, and it was kind of the top 10 mistakes that parents make, and number 1 was buying a college sweatshirt in your size, right? in the parent size, right?
Yeah.
So it's this. It's making the student feel like, yeah, there's 1 or 2 colleges that you feel like are worth the investment, or are going to make you proud, or are good enough. And this is a real tough issue, and I think it's something that families need to talk about at the beginning of the college admission experience, and be really open about kind of what the priorities are and what kind of schools they're excited about. I every year, and I've just done it this year, every year I ask students what they wish they could say to their parents. And I asked our seniors what they wish they could say to their parents. And a lot of times that's kind of front and center is, I'm trying my best to make you proud, or I don't want to disappoint you. I'm trying my best, but I just don't feel like that's enough. Or one student recently said, don't place these large hopes and expectations on me because I won't live up to them, and just young people want so badly to please their parents and make them proud. And so when they feel like there's a college that is not going to meet that standard, that's tough.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that, Brennan. I think that's going to really resonate with so many of our parents that really just love their kid, which is why they're listening here for more information. But this is the last thing in the world they want to do. And also, parents, be careful with all the mail that you receive. I've had so many conversations this week, Brennan. I've had 4 or 5 conversations with parents saying, my child's getting mail from such and such school. What does that mean? And, you need to know that colleges buy lists of names that sometimes can be in excess of $250,000, and they blitz, your student with these flyers. And that does not mean you're getting in, because more often than not, these conversations with me come from a parent that they get a mailer from an extremely prestigious school and they don't want to feel like they're missing out on an opportunity. And you and I know that school still may be a stretch for the kid, and it may not be the right match anyway. So just had
right. And it's often the subtle things we do or say that are totally unintentional, but can really send messages to students, right? And so it's the way our faces light up when certain highly selective college sends a mail, or something like that, or when they maybe a recruited athlete gets some interest from one of those colleges, and then we don't have that same response to another college, right?
Yeah.
And look, they pick up on this stuff, right?
Yeah, I think you've said it really, really, really well. So parents, just be very, very, very careful, and it probably starts with doing your own, self-reflection as well. Yeah, we can't emphasize this point enough, because the college process, boy, it can be one that really, it can be exhilarating for the student, but it can also be one that the student can take a hit on their self-esteem, and a lot of it does depend on the parents' unconditional acceptance for them.
And for many students, it's the first really public kind of this public feeling of being exposed.
Mm-hmm.
And it can, especially if they get a decision that they're not excited about, then that can be crushing.
Yeah. Well, let's keep moving. So our second misstep / mistake in the area of not validating your own child's self-worth is assuming if you haven't heard of a college, it must not be any good. So this is something, Brennan, we've all dealt with as counselors, right? Where we recommend schools that a lot of times would be amazing matches, but maybe it's not on ESPN, so people haven't heard about it. You want to comment on this one?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I cringe when I'm sitting with a family for the first time, and maybe I throw out a couple of school names, and they say, "What? What's that school?" And immediately I know this is not going to go well, right? Yeah, I mean, I think that there's obviously so many amazing schools out there, and whether it's a school on the colleges that change lives list that might never heard of, and we're suggesting it because we know they have a program that's really strong that student is interested in. There's it's easy to get obsessed with kind of rankings and the kind of the big schools that we hear about, like you said, on ESPN or on even on NPR, right? Like where the folks are experts in a certain area, and it's just it's not that easy. There's some hidden gems out there.
Yeah, and this one is very, very similar. So our third point here would be too much emphasis on prestige / name recognition, rankings, in the college admission process. Maybe you want to talk about rankings a little bit here? And
I mean, that's don't get me started, Mark.
me either. But let's let our listeners hear from you on rankings. They've heard from me.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I'm about ready to stage a sit-in at U.S. News and World Report because I just see rankings impacting college admission in so many really destructive ways. And when you talk about student mental health and the selectivity of colleges and some of the policy decisions that the colleges are making based on those rankings are really kind of scary and are not in the best interest of education or students or families. But we buy into it. I have a good friend who's also in the profession who actually went to Westtown, Matt Struckmeyer,
Nice.
And he's at Laguna Blanca School out in California. And he talks about it as the kind of the Patagonia effect, right? Like you might have a jacket that's just as good and maybe even warmer or better made, but Patagonia's got the name, and so you want to be seen walking around in the Patagonia jacket, and when we focus so much on that name recognition and on the rankings and where they sit, I think it just it misses the whole point of education.
Yeah, and a couple of things. There's a sense from parents oftentimes and students that these rankings are precise and they're external arbiters of fairness. And there's so much subjectivity in the rankings. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
They're based on their formulas and how they tweak and there's also a business side. Like they're not going to have the same school rank the same every year. Why? They want to sell magazines. So they shake it up a little bit to sell magazines. And so these are not precise formulas. They're highly subjective. Let alone does it indicate that a school would be a match for you. And then in life, it's so much about your character and, your relationship building and whether you're good at what you do, your integrity, your work ethic that are going to determine your sort of career trajectory. And so, Brennan and I we could literally go on and forever on this. And when you stage that sit-in, call me because I'm on a plane to join you, my friend.
All right.
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. So our next point in not validating your own child's self-worth would be not listening to your child's hopes, fears, and enthusiasm. I love this point, Brennan, and why don't you elucidate and share a little more?
Yeah. So again, this is a exercise I do with my senior families every year, and I ask the parents what their hopes and fears are for the child, and then in a survey, and then I ask students separately kind of what their hopes and fears are about college, and about college admission especially, and their fears are really raw, and sometimes in kind of the details and the kind of hype around college admission, we don't listen to those. And some of those fears can be as plain as, I'm worried I won't even get into a college, or I'm afraid I'll let you down, or I'm afraid that I won't pick the right college, or so I think it's really important to, again, have those conversations early and often throughout the college admission experience, and just before you even start visiting colleges, sit down and say, what are you excited about? What are you afraid of? Why do you want to go to college? And have those conversations, and then keep coming back to them throughout the experience, and say, okay, what are you worried about now? And is that, what can we do about it? And are those real fears, or how to approach that?
Brendan, I also like the point here about listening to their enthusiasm. Well, share an example of that for a parent, how they can really be in tune with their child's enthusiasm, and how that can sort of impact, thoughts on the college process from the parent.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we've all seen it, when anybody who is a parent has seen it, when their student is, or their child is just really ramped up about something and excited about something and inspired by something. And so we need to kind of keep an eye out for that in the college admission experience. And if they're excited about a certain program or a certain aspect of a college, being able to kind of reinforce that and help the student articulate that, and then kind of use that to kind of frame the rest of the college search. So, I noticed you were really excited about this aspect of a school that we saw on the tour, and so why don't we look for some other schools that share that experience?
Yeah, and this one can have overlaps to the picking the major or the career as well, right? So the child is really excited, about creative writing or something, but the parent always envisioned that this would be. I literally had a parent tell me, this week that you're supposed to be my child that's a doctor. This isn't the plan. And
right.
And so it can these tend to morph into each other in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's take a break to learn about Mark's recommended resource for the week.
Friends, our recommended resource for week 40 is the Appleruth Experts Corner, a highly informative blog geared for parents of high school students who want to stay ahead of the curve with expert articles on college admissions, standardized testing, and more. You can start reading the Experts Corner now at appleruth.com/experts. That's appleruth.com/experts. The Experts Corner is published by Appleruth Tutoring Services, a respected test prep company founded in 2001 by Dr. Jed Appleruth, who holds a PhD in educational psychology and is a frequent author of the Experts Corner. His highly effective approach to fostering student success is reflected both in the Expert Corner article and in Appleruth's founding mission to develop smarter approach to tutoring. Whether you want to learn the latest developments in testing, such as the recent SAT scoring debacle, or you want expert tips on how to motivate your student, the Experts Corner has something for you at appleruth.com/experts. Now, if you like what you see at the Experts Corner, you can also receive Appleruth articles directly in your inbox by signing up for the newsletter. Just go to appleruth.com/experts to get started. I believe that you'll find the Experts Corner to be just as engaging, timely, and informative as I do. By the way, I also interviewed Dr. Jed Appleruth on episodes 28 and 29, and I highly recommend you go back and listen to those interviews. Episode 29 has been our most listened to episode of the 40 episodes we've had on Your College Bound Kid. And so our last point, the fifth point in this section on not validating your own child's self-worth, is comparing your child to one of their older siblings. What can you share with us about this, Brennan?
Well, as the second child, I can share a lot about that.
Oh, this is great.
No, I mean, no, my parents were actually really great about not comparing me to my older brother. And especially because, we're very different but I all the time I have parents sit in my office that, both their children went to our school, and they don't mean to compare them, but they say, well, when John went through this, he experienced this. And that's great. And that's helpful for the parent, but not helpful for the student. It can feel like that they don't own their own process, and that they're being held up to a different standard, or it can get complicated.
Yeah, and I've noticed this is really tricky, especially like if my parents were sort of type A, go-getter, high achiever types, maybe they had high GPAs, graduated toward the top of their class, and maybe the first child is a little bit like that, but the second child isn't. Maybe they don't have as much drive, or they have interest in other areas. I've just seen that be really, really hard, because parents, first of all, you're going to think the way you naturally think anyway. So if you were that person yourself that did your work ahead of time, or really hunkered down and sought out teachers on their own, if you did all that, and then your first child does that, and then your second child, that's just not where they're at in their development, or they have struggles, boy, that's when I see it being really, really difficult and understandably so, because you're going to think the way you naturally think. But yep. Talk about how the child feels when that happens, Brennan.
Yeah, I mean, it can be really deflating, right? And it can be, I see it happening sometime with testing too, where a parent says, well, all Johnny needed to do was to take a couple more practice tests and do this, and his test scores went way up. And that not all students are made the same, and for students who don't test well, and maybe their older sibling did, that can feel like, oh well, I'm not good enough, right? And that can be really tough. That can really knock a student down a couple of rungs.
Great. Thanks for that.
Next week in the news, free college goes mainstream. And we'll be in chapter 41 of 171 answers. And we're talking about the differences between the old SAT and the new SAT. And next week's question is from a mom who wants to know if the majority of spots that Ivy League colleges give out in the early decision round favors athletes. And Mark will wrap up with Brennan Barnard in the final part of the 20 common mistakes parents make in the admissions process.
Listeners, I'm just going to let you know next week episode is going to be much longer than normal. So might want to be on a long drive because my interview with Brennan is going to be about 40 to 45 minutes. So go for a nice walk with your dog and enjoy it.
And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. And if you find this podcast helpful, it would help us tremendously if you would subscribe and write us a review on your favorite podcast listening station. And please be sure to click the share button and send it to someone you know who could really use this information. The amazing music that you hear is by Victor Allen Weeks. Artwork is by Andrea Togo. Marketing designs are by Kimberly Blass. And Your College Bound Kid is produced by Esteban Sartho. If you want to get a copy of the book, 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions, you can go right to 171answers.com. And if you would like to have a college coaching session with Mark, you can send him a text at area code 404-664-4340.
And if you have a question or a few questions that you would like for us to answer on each show, please email us at questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. That's questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. Every week, we'll take one question and include it in the episode. We don't like your questions. We love your questions, so send them our way. And by the way, check out our website, which is just simply yourcollegeboundkid.com. Again, we thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to meeting with you again next week.